Welcome to Sumita Roy's English classroom. I'm Professor Sumita Roy. Today we have a video on literature once more. As I told you, from the literature videos, you can learn both language and literature. The text which we are going to start today needs two parts. We will have two videos on this, and it is George Bernard Shaw's famous drama, Saint Joan. The name of the text is St. Joan. The genre is drama, and the author is George Bernard Shaw. Shaw was an Irish writer, but we consider him as a British writer because he was writing and he was also presenting his plays mainly in London. Now, here is a play about Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc was a heroine of France, and that was in the medieval times, not in the modern times. Shaw wrote this play in 1923. That was why the reason was very simple because Joan was canonized as a saint. The term canonized, I have told you already in a video where I gave you pictures of famous personalities. You can go back to that and look at the picture of Mother Teresa, where I have told you about canonization. Canonization is a process of the Roman Catholic Church where a person is declared as a saint. So here was a village girl, a peasant girl, a very young girl who wanted to fight to liberate France from the occupation of the British. But she was considered to be a heretic and she was burnt at the age of 18. She was burnt at the stakes. For a long time, there was no response. And finally, in the year uh, 1920, she was canonized. So we are going to talk about this in two parts. The first part will discuss only the preface to the play, which is a prose preface. It's not drama, it is a prose form. Why we need to discuss the preface in one whole video is because Shaw's drama is called a drama of ideas. Drama of ideas would mean that he is not much interested in the action only. Usually drama or television screenplay, all this we see that action is very important. What is happening on stage is important. But in Shaw's plays, it is the ideas, the arguments, the counter arguments that are most important. In the preface, Shaw puts forward his own ideas about what exactly this play means. Why should he write a play like this? Now, the title itself is very important because all through the stories, the historic accounts of the story of Joan of Arc, A-R-C, it's never named as Saint Joan. One of the reasons is because she got sainthood only in 1920, and this play was produced in 1923, just 3 years later. The occasion of the play was the canonization of Joan of Arc into Saint Joan. That is why he uses the title Saint Joan. He does not say Joan of Arc. But whenever we look at the story of Joan of Arc, we find that she is an innocent, simple girl, not educated at all, and she was born in the village in 1412. But she was not allowed to live her full life. So 1431, she is burnt. She is proved as a heretic and she is burnt to death. This is how her life ends. Soon the church realizes that this was a mistake. Joan was not really somebody who was a heretic. Joan was doing something great for the nation. And therefore, in 1456, that is a little more than 20 years later, almost 25 years later, they restituted her again, rehabilitation. They brought her back by saying, no, Joan was innocent. There was nothing wrong with her. She was not planning against the people. She was not a witch. In those days, witch hunting was a great thing. It was a great punishment which was given to people. Then in 1904, so many years passed from 1456 to 1904, there was nothing much about her. Lot of history was written about her where she was put in a very romantic picture, that she was very beautiful, she was very courageous, she was a person who was supernatural, angelic, all these terms were used. So Shaw wants to write about Joan, making Joan as somebody who is highly intelligent and who uses her mind rather than only her skills. She's not a soldier, then how does she fight? All these ideas are there in the play, and that is why the preface becomes so important. Shaw begins talking in the preface about describing Joan as an apostle. An apostle is a saint. An apostle is a person, a holy person, a person who has the message of God. But he is using secularization of language. He's using terms which are religious, but in a very secular terminology. So he uses the word apostle. But what does he say? He says that she is an apostle of nationalism because she said that the French should rule France. The British should not rule France. The British should go back and they should rule their own country. They should not try to rule France. That is, she was an apostle of nationalism. She was one of the first representatives of nationalism and also of gender equality. Shaw is writing in the 20th century. He's a modern dramatist. And in modernism, gender equality plays a lot of role. So Shaw uses Joan's story to indicate gender equality. He says that if she was very feminine, if she was very soft and delicate and gentle, she couldn't have lived with the soldiers because the soldiers would feel attracted to her as though she's a woman. But she lived with the soldiers like a man and she fought with them as a man. So here is gender equality. They all respected her, which we will read in the, third scene. When I talk in the second video, I will talk about the text proper. Here we are talking mainly about the preface. So that is what he says, that he is an apostle of these two very important concepts in the 20th century. One is nationalism, because at that point of time, Britain was ruling a huge area of the world. And Shaw was of the opinion that freedom should be given to these colonies. India itself was fighting for its freedom at that time. India got its freedom much, much later in 1947. The play was written in 1923. So the play uses the theme of nationalism because Shaw believed in this. Shaw's ideas are put here. Then, of course, there is the concept of dress. What did Joan wear? Now, to go to war, you have to wear an armor. You can't really wear your, skirt and go. In those days, women used to wear feminine clothes. Now we have unisex kind of clothes, but at that time they didn't. So she couldn't have fought with that. She asks for a sword and she asks for various things which will help her to be a part of the role which she's undertaken. So dress becomes a very important point here. The people who see her object to her dressing by saying, why is a peasant girl Why is a village girl dressed like this? She should go back and she should do her embroidery and stitching. She should stay at home and do her cooking. She should not be here talking about war. And the next very important concept is the concept of war, where the Prince of France is in hiding. He has no courage to fight, and the British have occupied all the territories. The person who's in charge of the battle, the general of the soldiers, says that this battle is impossible to win. And it is Joan who comes and changes the entire thing. She is the one who brings back enough places as free France, and she also helps to crown the prince as the king. King Charles later becomes a very powerful king, but it was Saint Joan or Joan of Arc who gave the throne to him. So these are all very important points about Joan. So who is this Joan? What is she? And how should we understand her from the point of view of ideas, from a very rational, logical point of view, not from the historical, legendary stories? Legendary stories are stories which are very, maybe they are true or false, but they are very pleasant. They are full of praises for the person about whom it is written. So Shaw says, we cannot really believe all this, but let me try to recreate history. Let me try to put it from a 20th century perspective. Because why would audience in the 20th century want to see this play? They would see it only, it is a 500 years old story. They would only see it if they can relate to it, if they can find situations which are close to what is happening at present. Now Shaw says that Joan is not alone in this persecution. Joan is killed when she is 18 years old, but imagine, Christ was crucified. He also tried to do good for humanity. Socrates was killed, and Napoleon also was poisoned. These are all comparisons which he makes. In the preface, he makes all these comparisons with Joan. Now he says that let us understand Joan. Throughout the play, Joan will say, and we will see in the next video, that some saints like Saint Catherine and Saint Michael are helping me. They are telling me to go and save France. This is what she says. But finally, at a point where everybody is against her, although she has helped France, she has helped the king and the church, they all hate her because she's got so much popularity. When we get popularity, everybody hates us. So they all hated her. And then we find that her friend is telling her, a soldier, the general, that you stop saying this, my voices, my saints, and all. Don't, nobody believes you. People think that you are committing a crime against religion. Because in those days, Roman Catholic Church was very, very strict. They said you cannot do such a thing going against the church, establishing your own authority and breaking the authority of the priest or the archbishop. Therefore, stop saying this. Then she says, and this is where Shaw comes in, she says that it is her common sense. Why is Joan capable of winning the battles? Why is Joan able to help France? Why is Joan able to bring back freedom? And the Britishers get threatened by her. They say, we want to kill her somehow. They make a plot to kill her. Of course, finally, the church punishes her. And this, Shaw says, is not because she was a witch or she was a magician or she was a heretic. Heretic is a person who is disloyal to the church. But she was a person who had rationality. She was a person who had common sense. And that is why we find that this young girl is able to carry out whatever she wants. She has powerful motivation. She has self confidence, and she is able to go step by step. She doesn't go finally to the end. We will say how in the play, how step by step she reaches her goal. So, first, she realizes that this is what she wants to do, and then she goes ahead to do it, not because she has some supernatural power, but because she has the ability to carry out whatever she resolves. If you resolve to do something and you carry it out, that is wonderful. So, Joan has many disadvantages here. She wants to free the nation from a foreign ruler. One is she's a woman. In the 15th century, women did not have any role in public life. Their role was completely a private role within the family. And here is Joan who wants a huge public, presence. She wants to go to war, and therefore people are not able to accept her. All the men say that this is impossible, but she achieves what is impossible and she chose them. Then the next disadvantage for her is her social position. She is not a princess. Suppose she was a woman, but she was born in a royal family, still people could understand that she wants to go to war because she is from a royal family. It has happened that many princesses have gone to war, but she is from a peasant family. She is from a village where nobody has even heard of, going to war. People don't really recruit soldiers from there unless necessary. But she says that because of the war, my father is giving huge taxes. We are suffering hardships. And this is not a correct war. This is a wrong war because why can't they rule their own country? Why are the Britishers coming to our country and creating problems for us? So she asks a very legitimate question. Then the next disadvantage she has is that she tries to prove to the church that she can hear directly the voices of the angels of God, the saints of God. This is a mistake because in the church there is community worship, and the person who puts you in touch with God is the priest, is the pastor, here the bishop and the archbishop. So, is she greater than the bishop or the archbishop? That is what people are asking. So, these are all the disadvantages she has. In spite of these disadvantages, she wins whatever she wants to do. Her victory is great, but her victory proves to be her greatest tragedy. Saint Joan is a tragedy. Why does Shaw say that? Because although at the end we find that Joan is resurrected, at the end of the last scene, Joan is burnt already. We are told that she has been burnt fully. Her heart did not burn. That message comes on the stage. On the stage, you can't show the burning of Joan, but she's dead. There is an epilogue, just like the preface. Of course, the preface is in prose. The epilogue also is a part of the drama. It is one more scene in the drama. And at that time, Joan has resurrected herself. She's come back in a spirit form. She's come back to life. And this is where people objected to the play. So Shaw gives a lot of arguments because this is a drama of ideas, I told you already. This drama of ideas gives you arguments as to how the epilogue is most important because we have to hear Joan's own point of view. We cannot trust the point of view of the people who were arguing in the court This was a religious court. It is called Inquisition. So Joan had to face the Inquisition, but we find that she cannot express herself there. She's very stubborn and she's very young, only 18. She's scared of dying. But in the epilogue, she comes into her own, and we find that Shaw says that genius, Saint Joan is not a religious saint here, but she's a genius. She's an intellectual saint. This is what is proved. This description he gives in the preface. In the play, of course, he cannot interfere, you know. The playwright has no role in the play. Only the characters can appear in the play. The characters can speak whatever lines the playwright gives them. But to express his own opinion, to express what he thinks about St. Joan and the tragedy of St. Joan, he has to write this preface. So he says, Joan's tragedy is her unawareness. She's not aware. Her tragedy is not a tragic flaw. You know, when we talk about tragedy, we talk about Aristotle. If I have time, I will do a video on tragedy, and then I will tell you in great detail. So, here, the tragic hero always has some sense of pride. You know, that is called a tragic flaw. The tragic flaw is usually there. When we read other plays, tragedies, we find, you know, some people are jealous, some people are angry, some people are ambitious. All these are tragic flaws in any tragedy we can find. They make a mistake. Joan does not have any such terrible flaw. She's trying to do good to humanity. She's trying to do good to French people. Then what is her flaw? Her flaw is inability to judge the people, inability to judge who is her friend and who is not, how their opinion is changing from scene 2 to scene 6, how the Archbishop changes his opinion about Joan. So Joan is unable to realize what people think about her. She's too lost in her world of dreams. And you cannot survive in this world unless you are smart. That is why Joan suffers death by burning. Shaw says that, you know, it is not Joan's tragic flaw, which is something terrible inherent. Her tragic flaw is her innocence. She's a young girl, she's an uneducated girl. But Shaw also says that why did Joan become a genius? And here he gives you a very relevant point, which is applicable today also in the 21st century. And that is, he says that she escaped modern education. Now, see the fun. Shaw is saying that if Joan had been educated, her genius would have been suppressed by the education. Because she was a free spirit, she didn't have to pass through the modern education. Modern at that time means medieval education, and therefore she she was saved. She could really bring out the best in her traits, the best of the qualities which are inherent. She had an intuition. Intuition is very important. You know, if you read psychology, you will find that a lot of work is being done on inwardness and intuition. So Shaw says that she had that, but history has not done justice to Joan. History has tried to put Joan as a magician who used to perform miracles. Shaw uses language, as I already mentioned to you, in a secular form. So, what does he mean by miracle? You know, this he describes through the Archbishop in the second scene. When we do the text, I will tell you again. But he uses the word like miracle, he uses the word like saint. All these are secularized. He doesn't mean Saint Joan as a saint because she's canonized. She is a saint for him because she's exceptional, she's intelligent, and she's also a genius. Shaw himself thought that he was a great intellectual. Of course, he was. I would not say that he wasn't. He was one of the greatest intellectuals of his generation. But he, thought that he was the greatest. We have a joke about him that some lady who was very beautiful wanted to marry him. Shaw did not get married. Then, when she proposed, Shaw saying that imagine our child who will have your intellect and my beauty. Shaw laughed and said, suppose it has my beauty. Shaw was not nice looking, and your intellect, because he did not respect the lady's intellect much. Then what will happen? This is only a joke about, very often we hear about it when we read Shaw's life. So, here in this play, Shaw is almost doing an autobiographical presentation of Joan. That is the last point for you to remember, that Shaw himself is a genius, he's highly intelligent, and he ascribes this quality by saying that history has not done justice to Joan. Today I'm writing a play, I'm going to do justice to Joan because Joan deserves that justice. So her tragedy is not a tragedy like we find in the 16th century British drama. You read Shakespeare's plays, you find that there is real tragedy. You read Webster or you read Marlowe. These are famous 16th century dramatists. These people wrote tragedies where you had clear tragic flaw. Here Shaw is writing a tragedy because Joan dies. Death is death of the protagonist. Now here we don't use the word hero, we use the word protagonist because protagonist is gender neutral. So Joan is the protagonist. She is the title role of this play, and she is the one who clearly stands out as a person who uses her capabilities which are given to her by nature. It is not something which is superimposed like training in, battle. She did not have any training as a soldier, but she had intuition. She had common sense. Again and again, Shaw insists on her common sense. So he says, Joan is not a miracle worker. Joan is a person who listens to her intuition, who goes inward, introspects a little, listens, and has the courage to carry out these things. If we can do this, then all of us become a genius like Joan. That is how the preface justifies the play, it justifies the uh, epilogue, it justifies Joan's characteristic, secularizes everything, and compares Joan to great people in history, tells us also to go away from the legends of Joan of Arc and come to this real point. So, when we are studying modernism, we talk about Shaw as a modern dramatist who's using history for the purpose of modernization. He takes a 15th century story and puts it into the 20th century, giving it a completely modern color. For all of you who are going to learn language from it, this much I told for the literature students. Those of you who are going to learn language from it can learn many new terms, you can get many ideas, and when you keep listening to English, please understand that even that English is not of your interest or relevant to you. If you keep hearing it, your English becomes better because all what you hear is getting stored in your mind without your conscious effort. So, if you hear these videos, I was happy many of you heard John Donne, and you try to use these ideas in your own words, that will be good. Speaking and writing, listening and reading also you can do. You can listen to what I have said and read it up. If you just search for Preface to St. Joan, you will get hundreds of pages. You can read all of them and see how you can understand this better how you can put it in your own words. Learn vocabulary. I have given so many words. I have said secularization. I have said introspection. I have said intuition. I have also said inquisition. So many words I have used which you might not know. So if you hear the video 10 times, these will become automatically clear to you. You don't even have to look at a dictionary. Again and again, you come to the same context, the word becomes clear. That is how new learners of their mother tongue learn it. They don't run to the dictionary every time. They listen to the same word. 20 people are using that word. Slowly, the meaning becomes clear to them. That is a natural process of learning the language. So, thank you for the first part of St. Joan by George Bernard Shaw is done. We will have one more part talking about the text. All the best and listen carefully.